What is up, guys? It is Marcus from Perspective Sports, and yesterday the Washington Wizards and Los Angeles Clippers agreed to a rather small deal. But this rather small deal could have an enormous yet favorable ripple effect for the Washington Wizards. But first, let's discuss why this Austin Rivers for Marcin Gortat straight up player-for-player deal works well for both teams. The Washington Wizards have done a less than favorable job of managing their cap space over the last 2 years. One example of that is giving Ian Mahinmi a 4-year, $64 million deal. But the Wizards need players who can come in and produce right now, and they didn't accomplish this in the draft. Although I do think Troy Brown Jr. will have a productive NBA career, it'll just take 2 to 3 seasons to develop him, in my opinion. Acquiring Austin Rivers will fulfill their need for a productive backup point guard, something they did by committee last season with Ramon Sessions, Ty Lawson, and Tim Frazier. This gives them flexibility to use Sessions and Lawson's roster spots to add depth in other positions. Also, getting rid of Gortat, who seemed to have fallen out of favor amongst his teammates, was a big win for team morale. Because his contract wasn't a problem, it was an expiring contract, which made this deal possible in my opinion. And I say that made this deal possible because the Los Angeles Clippers are currently convincing DeAndre Jordan to opt in to the final year of his contract so they can trade him like they did with Chris Paul. Meaning they'll have a void at center that needs to be filled for at least one season. And Marcin Gortat can be that guy for that one season, and then they'll have $13 million in cap space coming off the books. The Clippers also had an excess of guards on the roster with Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, Milos Teodosic, Avery Bradley, who's a free agent now, and Austin Rivers, all guys worthy of seeing time. This deal cuts down on how many guards they have and fills their soon-to-be void at center. This also gets rid of a guy who was kind of a problem for the team. And we're going to just talk about last season, the trash talking when he wasn't even dressed, but that wasn't really that big of a deal in my opinion. The big deal was the overall father-son dynamic. I think that drove Chris Paul away. It didn't sit well with a lot of players, especially not after Doc giving him that contract that most people felt he didn't really deserve. Now let's focus back on the Washington Wizards. After this move, they are in dire need of a center, and they'll be targeting a lot of people. But I think they'll zero in on none other than DeMarcus Cousins, arguably the best center in the league, and former teammate of Washington Wizards point guard John Wall. They spent time together at Kentucky along with Eric Bledsoe. That team was loaded with NBA talent. But I think the Wizards are a legitimate threat to sign DeMarcus Cousins for the simple reason that the New Orleans Pelicans seem to be extremely worried about his recovery. According to Bleacher Report, the Pelicans are considering offering DeMarcus Cousins a short-term deal, 2 to 3 years, at less than the max. If they do that, I think that all but ends the possibility of DeMarcus Cousins being back in New Orleans alongside Anthony Davis. And I think the Wizards are going to jump on this opportunity, but in order to make that happen, they'll have to orchestrate a sign and trade that'll see them trade Otto Porter, a guy who I like, but I think is a bit on the overpaid side. And here's how I think the deal would look. The Washington Wizards will receive DeMarcus Cousins and E'Twaun Moore in exchange for Otto Porter, Ian Mahinmi, and a 2019 Wizards first-round pick that's top 20 protected, and if it doesn't convey, then no pick will convey at all. This deal works for the New Orleans Pelicans because they get a shooter to put around Anthony Davis, giving them a core of Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday, and Otto Porter. That's a pretty solid core in my opinion, and when you add Nikola Mirotic, some free agents, it's an overall solid team. Not a contender, but competitive. The Wizards agreed to part ways with Otto Porter with the belief that Kelly Oubre, who played a considerable amount of minutes during the playoffs, and actually when you put his numbers side by side with Otto Porter per 36 minutes, they're almost identical outside of the shot percentages, but the points, rebounds, and assists per game, they produce almost the same thing. And with John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, and Bradley Beal, you don't need Oubre to do anything special. You don't need him to do too much. You just need him to play efficient basketball. And that's another reason I added E'Twaun Moore into the deal, because the Wizards get more depth again, and they don't have the cap space to go out and do it in free agency. So you do it in a deal where you have a little bit of leverage like this one. And also, according to Hoop Rumors, the max salary for DeMarcus Cousins would be in the range of about $30.3 million. Otto Porter takes up about $26 million of that, Mahinmi $15.9 million. So we sent out about $41.9 million and took on about $38 million. I, for one, say that's a good thing when you're trimming your cap by a little over $2 million and acquiring DeMarcus Cousins and E'Twaun Moore in the process. Well, there you guys have it. What do you think the Washington Wizards will do to fill their center void? I mean, you have a lot of good centers on the market. Jusuf Nurkic, DeMarcus Cousins. I think they're going to zero in on DeMarcus Cousins, and I think they'll be willing to part ways with Otto Porter to do so. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. I'll see you there.